Hi guys, I'm live. How you guys doing? I'm going to do a music lesson on this video. The price of figuring this out in my head, getting the bugs worked out, was high, and the fact that I bet the lady that runs the jury duty pool every time I've gone twice, the jury duty, she knows me now. And I got her name wrong because I was so deep in thought in figuring the bugs out to give you this video that I got her name wrong. So you know who you are. I'm sorry I got your name wrong. I knew your name. I was just deep in thought about figuring out the rest of what I needed to know to do this video. So sorry about that. I did know your name. Both times that I had jury duty under her, she gave me a patriotic American flag pin. Like a writing pin, and each time it lasts like 6 months. Well, at least this one's still lasting. Last time it lasted like 6 months. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the pin. Sorry for being so distracted that I got your name wrong, but I was deep in thought about figuring out the rest for this video. So this video is about the circle of fists or circle of force. I finally mastered it, and believe me, it isn't easy, and there's no book on it. Nobody teaches it to you. You just have to work it out in your mind. And I finally worked the bugs out. I got the thought to do this video because I played the Star Spangled Banner in all 12 keys around the circle of force today, and I did it right for once. Dang it! I finally got that cycle right. I didn't play the Star Spangled Banner perfectly in each key I was in at any given time, but that's just me. But I did do it in all 12 keys 13 times, starting and ending on the same key, which was E major. So I finally got the cycle under my belt, even though I'm sure I didn't play it perfectly all 13 times, but I got the cycle right, and that's what encouraged me to do this video on the circle of force or fists. Someone asked me 3 years ago or so to do this, and I wasn't even close to being ready. But I remember the person asking me, and I've done it since a couple times, but now I really have it. So this is a lesson on the circle of force, circle of fists. So let's do this. So one of the main purposes of knowing the circle of force and fists inside and out. I'm walking on a curb right now, so I have to be careful how I walk. There's cars going too, so I have to stay on the curb and do the video at the same time. So to do anything you're doing in all 12 keys around the circle of force, it's good to know the circle of force and how it functions and how it works. So let's get into this. So since Jimi Hendrix played the Star Spangled Banner in the key of E, tuned to an E flat guitar, though, I used my E flat guitar today, and I started it in the key of E in an E flat guitar, a la Hendrix's version. But then I wanted to do it around the circle of force. So here's what you do. You play it in the key of E, so that's one thing. Then I decided to go up in force or down in fists. I think of it as up in force right now, but it's also down in fists. But if you think of it up in force, it's pretty easy to visualize on this fret on the guitar. So that's how I thought of it. So start in the key of E, then play it in the key of A. That's up 1/4. Okay, that just means sliding it up 5 frets, in the 5th position instead of the open position. Then play it in the key of D. Now it's up 5 more frets. That's in the 10th position. Then you play it in the key of G. That could be the 3rd position, or it could be the 15th position. Either way, that's G, which is the 4th from D. So I probably played it in the 15th position. And then from G, play it in C. That's up another 4th, and play that in the 8th position. That's how I did it. And then from C, go up to F. You can play the 13th position or the 1st position. I chose the 13th, I think. So play it in F, and then you start the flats. Go up to do it in B flat. I did that in the 6th position. Then do it in E flat. That's in the 11th position. Now it gets interesting. You can think of it, the next one, as A flat, which is the 16th position, or you can think of that as G sharp, which is also the 16th position. It makes a difference, but it's not that important, but it does make some difference. If you think of it as is going from E flat to G sharp, that's going up an augmented third, even though it's technically also a perfect fourth. An augmented third is a perfect fourth, it's just inharmonic equivalent. But if you think of it as going up to A flat from E flat, you're still going up a perfect fourth, literally. I chose to think of it as going up an augmented third, so I thought of it as going up to G sharp. From E flat to G sharp is an augmented third, but it functions as a perfect fourth. It's also because it's also 5 half steps, and I played that on the 16th position, and then that's fine. But let me take the other route I could have chosen. I could have thought of that as A flat. You can do that too. Still 16th position, but now you thought of that as a perfect fourth up from E flat. But let's do that. Let's do that also. Let's do that after I comment that E flat to G sharp is an augmented third. But if I thought of the G sharp as A flat, that would still be a perfect fourth above E flat. So now the augmented third would be between A flat and C sharp in the 9th position, and that is another augmented third. Only instead of being from E flat to G sharp, it's A flat to C sharp. But once again, it's an augmented third. Thank you for the dollar. Someone's donated me $1. Thank you, appreciate that. That's the gist of it. You can either think of it as going from E flat to G sharp, which is an augmented third, or keep going to A flat and then go from A flat to C sharp, then that becomes an augmented third. Now I chose the E flat to G sharp. Think of it that way as an augmented third. So now I would be in G sharp, which is I played it in the 16th position, and then then go to C sharp, which is the 9th position, which is up a perfect fourth from the G sharp, and then go up an F to F sharp, which is the 14th position, which is up a fourth from C sharp, and then go up to B from F sharp, which is the 7th position, and then go up to E in the 12th position, or the open position. I think I did the open position again. I might have done the 12th, which completes the circle of force. Starting in E and ending on E. Whether you think of the A flat as the A flat or as the G sharp, either way, just do the mental gymnastics and get yourself around the circle of force, and that's a cool thing. Now, but you're still not done. This is the part I was figuring out when I saw my friend from the jury duty pool. You have to figure out, why did you have an augmented third in there? How did that work out, and why did you have to do that? And why did you do that? You really have to think of that. Well, let's do that work. That's the hard thing. So when you go around a circle of force, think of it as up 7 force and then up 5 force. That's how I do it. Or if you think of it as fifths, think of it as up 7 fifths and up 5 fifths. Do the 7, which is the longer one, first, and then do the 5 after that. So if you're doing force, you think of the first leap as 7 perfect force from where you start, and then finally the next leap is up 5 perfect force from there back to your octave where you started, the note that you started on. If that's fifths, you think of that as fifths. If it's fourths, you think of that as fourths. That's how I do it. Well, we're doing force, so let's do it thinking of it as force. Now here is the magic. All right, so let's digress for a second and do up fifths. Just to know the intervals up from 1 and going up fifths. Starting on a 1 and you go up in fifths to get back, go up as far as you want to go. The pattern is 1, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7, 4, 1. All right, what does that mean? Well, if you're an F, that's 1. Then up a fifth is C, that's 5, because C is a fifth above F, and so forth. So 1 is step 1 is 1. Up a fifth is 5. Up another fifth is 2. Up another fifth is 6. Another fifth is 3. Another 6 is 7. Another 6 is 4. And another 6 is 1. But here's the thing. The 4 is an augmented 4. So the 1 then becomes an augmented 1, an augmented octave. which is actually a minor ninth or minor second, but it's actually a half step above the note you started on, but has the same letter name. It's actually an augmented octave, or an augmented unison. You get that sharp, whatever you started with. So let's say I start in C. So I go C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp. What? That's C sharp though. That's an augmented octave. It's up a half step, but it's still spelled like a C. But it's still up a half step, but it's an augmented octave. There's where the discrepancy is going to come in. So now, once I started an augmented octave, I'm going to go up. I'm going to go up 5 steps in fifths for the sake of this. So, what are the first 5? C, G, D, A, and E. Wait, C, G, D, A, E, and B. Because C is 1, so G is 2. So going up 5 is going up from C, G, D, A, E to B. So going up 5 is going up a major 7th. But here's the trick. You're starting. I went up 7, which got me to C sharp. That's actually 7 perfect fifths above C. But now, when I go 5 perfect fifths above the C sharp, I'm going to get a major 7th above the C sharp, which would be a B sharp, because B is a major 7th above C, but a major 7th above C sharp is B sharp. So going around in fifths brings you to an augmented 7th, acting as a octave, but really isn't an octave. It's actually an augmented 7th because of the way the fifths work out. So to avoid calling it an augmented 7th, if I'm doing fifths, I'm gonna call one of the fifths a diminished 6th. You get that? C to G can be C to A double flat, which is a C, which is a diminished 6th. See that? F to C could be F to D double flat, which is a diminished 6th. So if I'm calling one of the fifths a diminished 6th, then that 7th gets another note added in. You count 6 instead of 5, so the 7 gets counted as a 1 because it gets one more half step added to it. A 6 is one more note in there. So technically, if I'm going up the circle of fifths, one of those fifths should be spelled as a diminished 6th. That way you end up on an octave, not an augmented 7th when you finish your circle of 12 consecutive perfect fifths. But why diminished 6? Because a perfect fifth is a diminished 6th, but diminished 6 adds one more note, which raises it from a 7, an augmented 7th, to an octave or unison. Well, how does that apply to doing it in fourths? Well, the inversion of a fourth is the inversion of a fifth is a fourth, and the inversion of a diminished 6 is an augmented third. So voila. In the case of the fourths, I'm going to go up 7 perfect fourths to start. Now that gets me to a flat. If I start on C and I go up 7 perfect fourths from C, I'm going to get C flat. That's the opposite of the fifth, where I got a C sharp. I'm going the other direction now. So instead of an augmented octave or an augmented unison, I'm getting a diminished octave. It's actually a C. It actually would be called C flat. From C to C flat is a diminished octave. Okay. Now, so this is the point I was thinking of when I was miscalled the name of my friend. C, a diminished octave. A diminished octave is seven perfect fourths above the note you started on. So if I start on C and I go up 7 perfect fourths, I get C flat. But now I'm going to go up 5 perfect fourths. Well, going up 5 perfect fourths is the same thing as going down 5 perfect fifths. And since going up 5 perfect fifths is C to B, or C to a major seventh, going down 5 perfect fifths is going from B to C, or from a major up a half step, from a major seventh up to the octave, to the octave. So going up a half step. So I'm going to. So I went 7 fourths from C to get C flat. I'm going to go 5 fourths up from C flat to get. I'm going to go 5 fourths up from C flat to go up a half step. But if C flat is where I start and I go up, I go up a half step or down a major seventh, then what I'm going to go up to, since it's up a half step, it's going to be up to a D double flat, because a half step above C flat is C, but you don't get to call it C because you started on C flat. So up a second from C flat, up a half step from C flat is D double flat. So why is that important? Because your circle of force ends in a D double flat, a diminished second, rather than an octave or unison. So since I end up with a diminished second when I go up around 12 circle of force, I have to take out one of the names, one of the letters, so I can end up with an octave or unison instead of a diminished. Instead of a diminished second, I can get a unison or octave by taking out one of the note names. So how did I do that? Well, when I went from E flat to G sharp, that's technically a perfect fourth, but I called it an augmented third. By calling it an augmented third instead of a perfect fourth, I took out one of the letter names, because there's one less letter name in a third than there is in a fourth. So that decreases the intervals from the final resting point from a diminished second to an octave or unison. Hence, when you go around the circle of force, going up the circle of force, you have to make one of those fourths an augmented third. So you take out one of the letters to end up on an octave rather than a diminished second. Or diminished ninth, you could think of it that way too. Same thing, if you go up in perfect fifths, you have to think of one of those perfect fifths as diminished. You have to think of one of those perfect fifths as a diminished sixth. So you end up calling it an octave instead of an augmented seventh. So instead of calling it an augmented seventh, you call it an octave, but to do that, you had to add a note name in. Well, how do you do that? You make one of the perfect fifths into a diminished sixth, and that adds one more letter name in your counting, which then promotes you from calling it or ending it on an augmented seventh to ending it on an octave or a unison. That's the ins and outs of the circle of fifths. I can do it in the back of my. I know it like the back of my hand now. I can do it in my sleep now, practically. I did the Star Spangled Banner. Was the first time I've to that degree of confidence done anything around the circle of force. That's the best I've done with the circle of force aspect of playing in 12 keys around the circle of force or fifths. So I'm happy with that, even though I messed up some of the little takes of the Star Spangled Banner. I got the circle of force right, and now I'm shared it with you. That's the lesson. You think of it as up 7, up 5. If it's fourths, think of it up 7 fourths and then up 5 fourths. If it's fifths, think of it as up 7 fifths and then up 5 fifths. But you have that tricky little either if you go up in fifths, you end up really playing with calling where you end up as an augmented seventh. So you have to add a note, make one of the perfect fifths into a diminished third, into a diminished sixth, so that you end up on an octave, or rather than an augmented seventh. When you're going up in fourths, you tend to end up on a flat 9. So take out one of the notes in one of the intervals, in one of the fourths, to make it an augmented third. Suddenly now, instead of ending up on a diminished ninth, is that what I called it? Or I hope I didn't say augmented ninth. I meant diminished ninth. You end up instead of ending up on a diminished ninth, you end up on an octave, because you took out one of the letter names by calling one of the perfect fourths an augmented third instead of a perfect fourth, which then allowed you to, instead of ending up on a diminished ninth, you end up on an octave. So that's the game. That's the whole thing about the circle fourths and third fifths. That's what you do. Took me not only 3 years since someone suggested me to do this lesson to figure it out. Not only did it take me 3 years to do this, nobody helped me. It was all head work of my own. It takes intelligence and dedication and work. Anyway, love you guys, peace, love, and rock, and happy 4th of July. Love you guys, peace, love, and rock and roll.